I'm going back to my parents' house for just 1 week. Seeing me say this in a firm attitude that was different from usual, my husband laughed in disbelief as if he was making fun of me. "Oh, is that so? Write your divorce papers too before you leave. Don't come back." As always, my husband spoke roughly. He must believe that I would never leave him on my own, that I wouldn't write the divorce papers, and that I would return soon. I was getting sick of my husband who kept looking down on me. "Understood. I'll write them." I quietly nodded and responded. When I started to pack my belongings into the suitcase I took out of the closet, my husband clicked his tongue in irritation. "What are you going to do without any money, stupid?" he said so loud enough for me to hear. I ignored my husband like that and tightly grasped the envelope I had in my pocket. "I'm currently 55 years old and my name is Amy. My husband, John, is 4 years older than me. We live together as a couple. Since I was raised in an orphanage, I had no relatives to rely on. Therefore, there were times when I felt very envious of my friends who had parents when I was a child. However, the life in the orphanage, spending fun times with the staff and my friends, naturally became an irreplaceable time for me. The cause of missing such orphanage life was all because of this marriage. Since we don't have children, people in the neighborhood sometimes tell us, "It must be nice to be able to spend time leisurely as a couple." Each time, I had mixed feelings because we, as a couple, are not leading a married life that would be envied by others. Most people would probably never notice that I was being treated terribly by my husband. Because we, as a couple, were acting as ordinary, sensible people outside of our house. My husband and I met at an equipment manufacturer where we worked after graduating from high school. I was a high school graduate and my husband was a university graduate, but we joined the company at the same time. I was assigned to a factory to manufacture parts as a high school graduate, and my husband worked at the head office as a salesman as a university graduate. When I joined the company, I had met him once during the new employee training, but we were not close enough to talk to each other because he was 4 years older than me. His sharp eyes and neat noseline were exactly my type in men. However, due to my gloomy personality, I was too busy adjusting to the new environment. In such a state, there was no way I could initiate a conversation with an older man. As I indulged in the fantasy of, "It would be nice if we could talk someday," my husband, who had been assigned to the sales department, came to visit the factory. Salespeople need to know the manufacturing process at the factory in order to have a thorough understanding of our company's products. Probably, my husband visited the factory for the sake of learning as well. Donned in work clothes and dealing with the task mechanically, I was surprised when my husband approached me and asked, "Aren't you Amy?" Although we hadn't met or talked since the new employee training, he recognized me even though my hairstyle was hidden by my work clothes. I couldn't believe it. "Yes, you're John, right?" "Exactly. We're the same batch. We couldn't talk much during the training. Nice to meet you again." John, being older, spoke to me in a friendly manner. I was so happy that I felt like jumping up, and it was all I could do to keep my composure. Although he wasn't someone I admired, it felt like a dream to be spoken to by a man I liked. After that, whenever John visited the factory, he would come to me and start a conversation. Although there were questions about the product, there were also times when we had a private conversation in a low voice so that others couldn't hear. Since we couldn't talk freely during work, John invited me to dinner. I felt a joy that seemed to overflow from my entire body. After having a meal with John, we naturally developed a relationship as we met and dated several times. And in our 5th year since joining the company, we decided to register our marriage. "Now that we're married, why don't you quit your job and become a full-time housewife? I want you to support me by staying at home. If that's what you want, then I'll do it." Filled with happiness and joy of being with the person I loved, I agreed to my husband's, "I want you to quit your job." At the young age of 23, many people in the workplace were retiring due to marriage, and I myself didn't have much attachment to my job. That's why I easily replied to my husband's request without much consideration, not knowing that this choice would derail my future life. After getting married, my life revolved around housework. For about the first year, I was able to live a trouble-free newlywed life. I served dinner to my husband when he came home tired and had him take a bath. I prepared drinks when he said, "I want alcohol," and even massaged him when he said, "Rub my feet." One thing I found out after getting married was that my husband was extremely obsessed with cleanliness. The house had to be kept very clean. Even such cleaning didn't bother me at all, thinking, if it's for the person I love. In the early days of our marriage, a friend from my orphanage days came to visit me once. Since she worked shift hours at a call center, we decided to meet during the daytime on a weekday. When she asked, "How's married life?" I told her, "I'm managing well as a full-time housewife." After hearing my life with my husband, my friend said with a serious expression, "Listening to you, it seems like your husband is very domineering. Amy, it feels like you're just a housekeeper." I was shocked by my friend's words. Being a housewife all the time, I didn't even think that my house was strange. "Huh? Isn't that normal?" Although I replied as if I wasn't bothered, I was quite shaken. Even after my friend left, my mind was clouded for the rest of the day, and I was unable to concentrate on my chores when my husband came home before I had finished cleaning. "Hey, are you here? Amy!" My husband stomped into the living room with a scary look on his face, making a tremendous noise. Surprised, I gave a jolt. "Despite telling you to wash it, the entrance mat was dirty. You're slacking off." I'm sorry." My husband scolded me fiercely for this one mistake. I was very confused as I had never seen him yell so much. The husband standing before me was the exact opposite of the gentle husband I knew, and "Next time, be careful. You're just a housewife with only a high school diploma who can't do anything." "Yes." Those were the words my husband spat out as he walked to the room. I couldn't get the phrase, "a high school graduate housewife who can't do anything," out of my head from the first time I was scolded. My husband, a university graduate, looked down on me, a high school graduate. Perhaps he approached me and married me to satisfy his self-esteem. Being with me, an orphanage-raised high school graduate, his competence could stand out, and he could feel superior. After being berated, I couldn't think otherwise, and my prediction came true. Since that day, my husband's attitude towards me changed drastically. "Here's your allowance for this month." Thank you." In our household, which used an allowance system, my husband was supposed to give me money on payday every month. Being a full-time housewife, I humbly accepted the money in the envelope from him. When I opened it, there was only $10 inside. Until last month, he used to give me $200, so when it suddenly decreased, I thought it might have been a mistake. About the amount, isn't there a mistake?" Since I was in the position of receiving an allowance, I felt hesitant to say, "It's too little," so I asked timidly, "Huh? There's no mistake. Why should I give a lot of money to someone who can't even do housework properly?" There was my husband, laughing snidely. I was lost for words and couldn't respond. Do I have to survive on just $10 for a month? Of course, I haven't been living extravagantly so far, but now I can't even afford to go to the hair salon, but I know that voicing such concerns would be pointless. I grit my teeth and held back. From then on, my allowance was just $10 each month. There were even times when it was as little as $5. The amount fluctuated depending on my work performance as a housewife in the previous month, but it never exceeded $10. Knowing I have no way to earn money, he intentionally doesn't give me a satisfactory allowance. By doing so, not only can I not escape, but he can also satisfy his own pride by supporting a wife who can't earn money. From the beginning, he married me to maintain his dignity. There was no love between us at all. When I realized that, I was so frustrated that tears welled up. He said, "I love you" many times, but was it a lie? When I thought that I had been deceived by my husband, I felt pathetic and wished I could go back to before we got married. However, such a wish is impossible to fulfill. I have to endure financial control from my husband for the decades of life ahead. I tried looking for a way to earn my own money, but if I worked part-time, my husband would find out. He strongly refused to let me work. If he found out I was working, in addition to financial control, I would end up getting hit and getting bruises on my body. I was scared and couldn't take a single step forward. Several decades have passed since I started suffering from my husband. I have managed to live while enduring the abuse and violence from him. It felt like I was living someone else's life, even though it was my own. The morning came and I waited for night to come. It felt like I was in prison every day. At 55, I was fed up with my daily life of just doing housework and turned on the vacuum cleaner with a sigh. At that moment, a call from an unknown number was displayed on my cell phone. Who could it be? In the early days of my marriage, I used to receive calls from former colleagues and friends from the orphanage, but in recent years, there have been none at all. The occasional calls I do get are basically only from telemarketers. Hello? I answered the phone thinking it was probably another sales call, but it was a call from an unexpected person.
Hello, is this Amy? It's me.
The voice calling my name with a raspy voice was surprisingly my father-in-law. Father-in-law? It's been a long time! What brings you to call all of a sudden?
Actually, I've been thinking about returning to Japan.
My in-laws have been living in America for a long time. They worked there from the time they were salaried workers, and after retirement, they decided to live there permanently because they liked the lifestyle. However, due to the impact of a pandemic, we had been unable to meet at all recently. But it seems that things have calmed down recently, and they are thinking of returning to Japan. Wow, really? Of course, I would love to see you! Actually, I had a good relationship with my in-laws.
If you need anything, feel free to ask.
They reached out to me like that. They probably think of me as their own child. Having no family of my own, I was so happy about the warm call from my father-in-law that I almost cried. From my situation, father-in-law, who has good intuition, asked,
"Are you having trouble with something? You should talk about it."
I was a little hesitant, but I told father-in-law everything about the constraints and verbal abuse my husband had put on me up to now.
What? That idiot son of mine!
My father-in-law, who had been listening to my story, was so angry that he seemed about to explode. I felt relieved that I was finally able to confess my feelings and reality to someone.
I'm sorry that I couldn't be of any help to you, Amy. From now on, I want you to rely on me. I've been thinking that I've had enough of living in America. My wife and I are going to return to Japan, so you can rely on us anytime.
Thank you so much! When I think about my in-laws coming back to Japan, I strangely feel encouraged. I might be able to live without obeying my husband. Suddenly, such hope descended upon me, and my heart was pounding. That day, after hearing that my in-laws would return to Japan, I was so distracted that dinner was delayed. As it happens, my husband came home earlier than usual. It seems that he didn't have much to do at work. Thinking that it was bad, I braced myself with one eye closed. What are you doing? Dinner isn't ready yet! As expected, my husband got angry right away and glared at me with a demonic expression. He looked like he would swing his hand at any moment. Reflexively, I took a step back. However, the words father-in-law told me on the phone earlier are echoing in my head.
You can rely on me anytime.
Father-in-law's words pushed me back and became my strength. I can't bear this life anymore. I'm going home for just a week. My husband laughed dismissively at my uncharacteristically resolute demeanor.
Huh? Where is your home? An orphanage? Write your divorce papers before you leave then. Don't come back ever again.
His words were as rough as always. He probably thought, she won't write the divorce papers that easily. She'll give up and come back soon. I was fed up with his condescending attitude. I understand. I quietly nodded. I picked up the pen and started to write on the divorce papers that were thrust in front of me. My husband, seeing this, asked, "Are you serious?" He looked at me, trembling. He had threatened me with divorce papers several times before. Each time, he expected me, who had no way to make money, to beg him, "Please, no divorce, I'm sorry." But this time was different. He was dumbfounded as I signed the divorce papers. I started packing my things and took out a suitcase from the closet. During that time, my husband clicked his tongue in irritation and said, "What are you going to do without money? You're an idiot." He made sure I could hear him. I ignored him, tightly clutching an envelope in my pocket. I left the house with my luggage and headed straight for a hotel near the airport. My in-laws were returning to Japan the next day, so I decided to meet them at the airport. I arrived at the hotel, took out money from the envelope I had been clenching in my pocket, and paid for the accommodation. I had recently been able to make money from my hobby of sewing. The orphanage that took care of me when I was a child was happy to buy things like pillow covers and bedspreads that I made. They also paid me in cash so my husband wouldn't find out. Although there was no one I knew from the time when I was taken care of at the orphanage, they were sympathetic when I told them about my situation and offered to help. From the current staff, I received really encouraging words. "You can always rely on us." I was really happy that I could use the precious money when I really needed it. Once I got to the hotel room, I fell asleep feeling relieved. I felt that I could greet my in-laws with a smile the next day. My in-laws returned to Japan the following afternoon. When I met them at the airport, they squinted their eyes and said, "You've truly had it tough, haven't you?" She emphasized with the hardships I had gone through.
It must have been really tough. I'm really sorry that I couldn't help you. We need to teach that stupid son a lesson.
Father-in-law seemed to be thinking about what should be done regarding his unfaithful son. After putting my luggage in my in-law's house, I immediately headed to the city office. When I submitted the divorce papers I filled out yesterday, I felt as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Now I am a stranger to my husband. I savored the joy and happiness of being free. I will be staying at my in-laws' house for a while. As expected, there were a tremendous number of calls from my ex-husband on my cell phone. At first, it was a few times a day, but the next day it was 20 times, and eventually it became 100 times. My ex-husband called me regardless of my working hours. I was really amazed that he was the one who threw the divorce papers at me. I could ignore or block calls from my ex-husband, but I couldn't stand the many calls, so I canceled my cell phone. I reported to my in-laws that I could finally have a peaceful daily life.
That's not enough to calm us down. We need to figure out what to do.
That's right. We need to make sure he reflects on his actions. My in-laws seemed to have come up with a punishment for their son. On Sunday afternoon, they said,
"Come with us."
Being told that, I got in the car driven by my father-in-law. I wonder where we're going, I thought, but the car drove along a familiar road and arrived at the condominium where my ex-husband lived. It was the condominium where I had been living until a few days ago.
"Amy, do you have the key?"
He asked me without any hesitation. "Yes, I do," I said, and handed over the house key I still had to my father-in-law.
"John, are you there? John!"
He stomped around, entering the house like a debt collector in a gangster movie, and the husky, raspy voice of my father-in-law was so powerful it made me tremble. "Huh? Who's there?" Fresh out of the bath, with his wet hair all messed up, he squinted at us.
Dad? Why?
He widened his eyes in surprise. No doubt he was shocked. His parents had appeared out of nowhere. From his perspective, his parents, who were supposed to still be overseas, suddenly appeared in front of him.
Long time no see, John.
Huh? What are you doing here? Why are you in Japan?
We came back because the pandemic in the US has settled down. More importantly, John, we have something to talk about.
Looking at me shrinking behind his father, my ex-husband seemed to sense what was coming, and he took a step back. Then he glared at me as if to say, "Why are you here?"
Why don't you answer when I call you so many times, Amy? Do you have such a right? Don't mess with me.
I shrunk in fear at my ex-husband's fierce yelling and verbal abuse. My father-in-law stood in front of me to shield me.
John, do you understand what you've been doing to Amy all this time? You took advantage of the fact that we were overseas and Amy had no one to rely on. Controlling her, using violence. Don't you feel ashamed as a person, as a man?
Watching my father-in-law scold my ex-husband, I was stunned. You know, he used to be quite a famous tough guy in his younger days. My mother-in-law secretly told me this in my ear, and it made sense.
That has nothing to do with you, Dad. Just because you're my father, it doesn't mean you can show up now and start lecturing me.
Unable to back down, my ex-husband took a confrontational stance and retaliated against my father-in-law's words. However, my father-in-law, who was not perturbed in the slightest by his son's bluster, pressed further.
Nothing to do with me? No way. Amy is our daughter, and your mother feels the same. What are you? Do you find it enjoyable to torment and verbally abuse your precious wife? You're not our child, nor anything else to us. We're cutting ties with you. This is a disownment.
Huh? Even I was surprised and looked at my father-in-law. My father-in-law was standing firm, staring at my ex-husband with a serious look in his eyes. It was clear at a glance that this wasn't something he said out of emotion. My mother-in-law, too, was silently closing her eyes and nodding deeply. It seems they had decided to disown their son even before visiting here.
Disownment? Cutting ties? You can't do that! And Amy, why aren't you saying anything while your husband is being accused like this? Husband? We're already divorced, you know. Huh? That can't be true.
The divorce papers you handed to me have already been submitted.
What?
My ex-husband turned pale, not having expected that the divorce papers had truly been submitted.
You don't ever need to show your face around here again. Get out of here right now.
Seeing my ex-husband's arrogant and negligent attitude towards me, my father-in-law, who seemed even scarier than when I was yelled at my ex-husband before, shouted in anger.
Ah!
My ex-husband, his wet hair flying wildly, disappeared from our home. This house was actually owned by my father-in-law. At the beginning of our marriage, we didn't have much money, so we were taken care of in a property owned by my father-in-law. And for the past 20-some years, we continued to live in the same house under their care. Thus, my ex-husband was literally kicked out of the house.
You're an incredible person, father-in-law. It's been a while since I let my true nature out. In the past, doing things like this was an everyday occurrence.
My father-in-law's hearty laughter made me and my mother-in-law laugh together. It felt like the first time I had genuinely laughed since separating from my ex-husband. Afterwards, my ex-husband, who lost his home, started living in a run-down old apartment. Unbeknownst to me, my ex-husband was on the verge of being fired from his company due to misconduct. He managed to convince his boss to keep him as a full-time employee, but his position was stripped and he was demoted back to a regular worker. Furthermore, he was transferred from the sales department to factory work. With his salary cut, he could only afford a cheap apartment with no bath or balcony. I felt relieved that I had gotten divorced before this happened. As for me, I am in the process of being adopted thanks to the suggestion of my in-laws. I was surprised at first, but since I don't have any parents, I was very happy about this proposal and accepted immediately without hesitation. My father-in-law and ex-husband ended up severing their parent-child relationship after all. My in-laws, who were actually quite wealthy, could foresee my ex-husband relying on them if they didn't cut ties, so they did it to avoid that. Under my in-laws, my parents, I am living a life of ease and happiness. Furthermore, I continue to pursue my hobby of sewing, creating items needed at orphanages. The staff still purchase the items I make. Lately, not only for orphanages, I've started creating bags and clothing to sell online. There are still few customers, but thankfully there are many good reviews, and I expect the number of sales to increase in the future. Being able to be with my kind parents and enjoy my freedom to work, I am truly happy now.
The voicemail crackles in my ear as an unfamiliar female voice speaks, each word hitting me like a punch to the gut. I have proof your husband was having an affair. If you want to know the truth, meet me at Cafe Rialto tomorrow at noon. I nearly dropped my phone, my hand trembling. Kyle? An affair? It can't be. We've been happily married for a decade with 2 beautiful children. He's not the cheating type, is he? My mind races as I go through the motions of getting Zach and Emma ready for bed. I plaster on a fake smile, reading them a bedtime story, while inside I'm screaming. Once they're asleep, I confront Kyle in our bedroom. Who is she? I demand, my voice shaking with anger and fear. Kyle looks up from his laptop, confused. Who is who? What are you talking about, Paige? I play the voicemail on speaker. His face pales. It's not what you think, he stammers. It's just a misunderstanding. Don't lie to me, I snap, hot tears stinging my eyes. How could you do this to us, to our family? Our voices rise, arguing back and forth until Zach appears in the doorway, rubbing his eyes sleepily. Mommy? Daddy? Why are you fighting? My heart breaks seeing my son's scared face. I take a deep breath, trying to compose myself. It's nothing, sweetie. Go back to bed. But as I tuck him in again, I know things will never be the same. The seed of doubt has been planted. The next day, I meet the mystery caller at the cafe. She introduces herself as Amber, a friend of Kyle's secretary, Trina. With shaking hands, she slides a manila envelope across the table. I'm sorry, she says quietly, but you deserve to know the truth. Inside are photos of Kyle and Trina in intimate embraces, undeniable evidence of their affair. The pain hits me like a tidal wave, drowning me in despair. How could he betray me like this? Betray our children? I stumble home in a daze, the photos clutched in my hand. Kyle is in the kitchen, whistling as he makes a sandwich. Rage boils up inside me. Get out, I say through gritted teeth, throwing the photos at him. Get out of my house, you lying, cheating bastard. Kyle's face drains of color as he sees the incriminating evidence. He tries to stammer excuses, but I'm not listening. I'm already dialing the number of the most ruthless divorce lawyer in town. I want full custody of the kids, I tell the lawyer, my voice hard as steel. And I want to bleed him dry financially. He needs to pay for what he's done. As I hang up, I catch a glimpse of my reflection in the mirror. My eyes are red from crying, but there's a new determination in them. Kyle has destroyed our marriage and our family, and I won't rest until I make him regret it. I storm into the living room, the incriminating photos clutched in my trembling hands. Kyle looks up from his laptop, his brow furrowed in confusion. We need to talk, I say, my voice shaking with barely contained rage. About your affair with Trina. His eyes widen for a split second before he quickly composes himself. I don't know what you're talking about, Paige. There is no affair. I throw the photos onto the coffee table. They fan out, each one a damning snapshot of his infidelity. Don't lie to me, Kyle. I have proof. How could you do this to me? To our family? Kyle stands up, running a hand through his hair. It's not what it looks like. Trina and we're just friends. Those photos are taken out of context. Friends don't kiss like that, I shout, jabbing a finger at a particularly intimate image. Friends don't sneak around behind their spouse's back. You've been cheating on me, admit it. Our voices escalate, hurling accusations and denials back and forth. The commotion wakes up the kids. Zach and Emma appear at the top of the stairs, their eyes wide with fear. Mommy? Daddy? What's going on? Zach asks, his voice small and scared. I feel a pang of guilt for arguing in front of them, but I can't back down. Not about this. Go back to bed, kids, Kyle says, forcing a smile. Mommy and I are just having a little disagreement. About what? Emma asks innocently. I open my mouth to tell them the truth, but Kyle cuts me off. It's grown-up stuff, sweetie. Nothing for you to worry about. Now off to bed, both of you. Reluctantly, they retreat to their rooms. I turn back to Kyle, my eyes narrowed. This conversation isn't over. I want the truth, Kyle. All of it. He sighs, rubbing his temples. Fine. You want the truth? Yes, Trina and I have gotten close, but it's not a full-blown affair. We've just kissed a few times. It was a mistake, I swear. A mistake? I scoff. Cheating on your wife and lying about it is more than just a mistake. It's a betrayal. It's unforgivable. I'm sorry, Paige. I never meant to hurt you. It won't happen again, I promise. Let's just forget about this and move on. Forget about it? You expect me to just sweep this under the rug and play happy family? I trusted you, Kyle. I built a life with you, and you threw it all away for some young secretary. I can't just forget that. Tears sting my eyes, but I blink them back. I won't let him see me cry. Not anymore. I think you should leave, I say quietly, my voice cold as ice. Go stay with your mistress. You two deserve each other. Paige, please, Kyle begs. Don't do this. Think of the kids. Think of our family. You should have thought of that before you cheated. I snap. Now get out of my house before I call the police and have you forcibly removed. Kyle stares at me for a long moment, his eyes searching mine for any hint of mercy. But I have none left to give. Finally, he grabs his keys and walks out the door, slamming it behind him. I sink onto the couch, my body shaking with silent sobs. How did we get here? Just yesterday, I thought we had the perfect life. Now it's all crumbling down around me. But as I sit there, staring at the photos of my husband's betrayal, a new emotion rises up inside me. Stronger than the pain, stronger than the heartbreak. Anger. White hot. All-consuming anger. Kyle thinks he can just apologize and move on, but I won't let him off that easy. He needs to pay for what he's done. And I'll make sure he does, even if it's the last thing I do. The next morning, I'm woken up by the ping of a new email on my phone. It's from an unknown sender with the subject line, "More proof of Kyle's affair." My stomach twists as I open the attachment. It's a video, grainy and low quality, but unmistakable. Kyle and Trina, tangled up in each other's arms, kissing passionately in what looks like a hotel room. The timestamp shows it was recorded just last week. I feel sick. How long has this been going on? How many times has he snuck away to be with her while I was at home taking care of our children? I forward the video to my lawyer, along with the photos from yesterday. I want sole custody of the kids, I type. He's an unfit father. Use this evidence to make sure he never sees them again. My lawyer responds within minutes. This is exactly what we need to bury him in court. Don't worry, Paige. We'll make him pay. A grim satisfaction settles over me. Kyle thinks he can just walk away from our marriage unscathed, but he has no idea what's coming for him. I scroll through my contacts until I find Amber's number, the woman who first told me about the affair. I hit call. I need your help, I say when she picks up. I need to know everything about Trina, where she lives, where she works, what she does in her free time. I need ammunition to destroy her life, like she destroyed mine. Amber is quiet for a moment. I'll see what I can find out, she finally says. But Paige, be careful. Don't let revenge consume you. It's too late for that, I say before hanging up. The next few days pass in a blur of lawyer meetings and hushed phone calls. I barely sleep, barely eat. All I can think about is making Kyle suffer. And then, a bombshell. Amber emails me a medical record she managed to obtain through a friend who works at Trina's doctor's office. Trina is pregnant, 8 weeks along. The timing lines up perfectly with Kyle's affair. The baby is his. I see red. Not only did he cheat on me, he got his mistress pregnant. He's starting a whole new family while abandoning the one he already has. I storm into my lawyer's office, slamming the medical record down on his desk. I want a paternity test, I demand. As soon as that baby is born, and when it proves Kyle is the father, I want him to pay child support. I want his mistress to bleed him dry financially, just like he's doing to me with this divorce. My lawyer nods, a glint in his eye. We'll file a petition for a paternity test as soon as the baby arrives. In the meantime, let's discuss alimony. With this new development, we can argue for a much higher amount. For the first time in days, I feel a flicker of hope. Kyle may have destroyed our marriage, but I won't let him destroy me. I'll take everything from him, just like he took everything from me. That night, I tuck Zach and Emma into bed, kissing their foreheads gently. I love you both so much, I whisper. I promise, I'll always fight for you. I won't let anyone hurt our family again. As I close their bedroom door, my phone buzzes with a new text message. It's from Kyle. I'm sorry, it reads. I never meant for any of this to happen. Can we please just talk, for the sake of the kids? I stare at the screen, my finger hovering over the reply button. A part of me wants to believe him, wants to hope that we can somehow salvage our marriage. But then, I remember the video. the photos, the baby. There's nothing left to talk about, I type back. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. I hit send and block his number. He's dead to me now, and I won't rest until I've buried him. The divorce proceedings are uglier than I ever could have imagined. Kyle and his lawyer fight me on every point, dragging out the process and draining my bank account with endless legal fees. But the worst blow comes when they bring up my history of postpartum depression. Your Honor, we have concerns about Mrs. Sullivan's mental stability, Kyle's lawyer argues in court. After the birth of their second child, she suffered from severe postpartum depression. Can we really trust her to have sole custody of the children? I sit there, stunned, as he presents medical records and therapist notes detailing my struggle. I glance at Kyle, expecting to see some hint of remorse or guilt on his face. But he just stares straight ahead, his expression blank. That was years ago, my lawyer counters. Mrs. Sullivan has been nothing but a devoted and capable mother since then. Mr. Sullivan, on the other hand, has demonstrated a pattern of deceit and infidelity. He is the one who is unfit to parent. The judge looks between us, her brow furrowed. I'll take this under consideration. For now, temporary joint custody will continue. But Mr. Sullivan, I must warn you, if there is any evidence that your affair has negatively impacted your children, it will be held against you in the final custody decision. Kyle nods, his jaw clenched. I feel a flicker of satisfaction. He may have tried to use my past against me, but his own sins are coming back to haunt him. As we leave the courthouse, I spot a familiar face in the crowd of reporters. Trina, Kyle's mistress, her belly just starting to swell with their illegitimate child. She catches my eye and smirks, placing a possessive hand on her stomach. I feel a surge of rage so strong it nearly knocks me off my feet. That night, I pour myself a large glass of wine and open up my laptop. If Kyle wants to play dirty, I'll show him just how low I can go. I create a fake social media profile and start digging into Trina's online presence. It doesn't take long to uncover some skeletons in her closet. Racy photos from her college days, posts alluding to past drug use and promiscuity. I compile it all into a neat little file and anonymously send it to her employer, her family, her friends. Let's see how she likes having her dirty laundry aired for all to see. A few days later, I get a frantic call from Kyle. What the hell did you do? He shouts. Trina got fired from her job. Her parents kicked her out of the house. Are you trying to ruin her life? Like you ruined mine? I say coldly. Consider it a taste of your own medicine. You two deserve each other. I hang up, feeling a twisted sense of triumph. But it's short-lived. The next day, I'm served with a stack of legal papers. Kyle is suing me for defamation of character and intentional infliction of emotional distress. He's seeking full custody of the kids and a restraining order against me. My lawyer reads through the documents, his face grim. This is serious, Paige. If he can prove you were behind the attack on Trina, it could badly hurt your case. The judge might see you as vindictive and unstable. I feel like I'm drowning. Every move I make to fight back against Kyle seems to blow up in my face. But I refuse to give up. I've come too far to let him win now. I drain my savings account to pay my legal bills. I take out a second mortgage on the house. I start working overtime at my job, barely seeing my kids except to kiss them goodnight. I'm exhausted, physically and emotionally, but I won't stop. Not until Kyle has lost everything, just like I have. In the end, the judge sides with me on custody. But Kyle's lawsuit has left me financially devastated. I'm up to my eyeballs in debt, barely able to keep the lights on and food on the table. As I tuck Zach and Emma in one night, fighting back tears of despair, I make them a promise. I will make this right, I whisper fiercely. I will make your father pay for what he's done to us, no matter what it takes. The bills keep piling up, an endless stream of overdue notices and threatening letters. Between the legal fees and the cost of supporting two households, Kyle and Trina have bled me dry financially. I've had to take a second job just to keep the lights on and put food on the table for Zach and Emma. Most nights, I come home long after they're asleep, collapsing into bed for a few short hours before starting the grueling cycle all over again. My parents help out where they can, watching the kids when I'm at work and slipping me cash when they think I'm not looking. But their own retirement savings will only stretch so far. I can't keep relying on them forever. Kyle, of course, is no help at all. He claims his own finances are strained, what with Trina's pregnancy and their new apartment. He's always conveniently short on his child support payments, leaving me to make up the difference. I feel like I'm drowning. suffocating under the weight of my mounting debt and responsibilities. Some days, it's all I can do to drag myself out of bed in the morning, but I refuse to let Kyle see me crumble. Whenever we meet to exchange the kids for his visitation days, I plaster on a smile and hold my head high, no matter how exhausted and hopeless I feel inside. "You're looking well, Paige," he says one day, his tone dripping with condescension. "I guess single motherhood suits you." I clench my fists so hard my nails bite into my palms. "No thanks to you," I say through gritted teeth. "You may have abandoned your family, but I will never stop fighting for our children." He just smirks. "Keep telling yourself that. But we both know you're one missed mortgage payment away from losing the house and having to beg me for a place to stay." It takes every ounce of self-control I possess not to slap the smug look off his face, but I won't give him the satisfaction of seeing me lose control. That night, I sit at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills and bank statements, trying to figure out how I'm going to make ends meet this month. I've already maxed out my credit cards and drained my meager savings account. I'm out of options as I bury my face in my hands, fighting back tears of despair. My phone buzzes with an incoming call from an unknown number. "Hello?" I say warily. "Paige, it's me." The voice on the other end is whispered, urgent. It's Amber. My heart leaps into my throat. I haven't heard from her since she helped me uncover evidence of Kyle's affair all those months ago. "Amber, what's going on? Is everything okay?" "I don't have much time," she says hurriedly, "but I think I know a way to make Kyle pay for what he's done to you. A way to hit him where it really hurts." I sit up straighter, my pulse quickening. I'm listening. "I have a friend. Well, more of a contact, really. He's a hacker, a good one. He might be able to help you get into Kyle's company's financial records, make it look like he's been embezzling money. If he gets caught, he could lose his job, maybe even face criminal charges." I'm silent for a long moment, my mind racing. It's a huge risk. If I get caught, I could go to jail myself, lose my kids for real this time. But the thought of Kyle finally facing some real consequences for his actions is too tempting to resist. "What do I need to do?" I ask, my voice steady with resolve. "Meet me tomorrow night, 8 p.m., at the old abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. Come alone. I'll introduce you to my contact and we can discuss the details." I take a deep breath, my heart hammering in my chest. I'll be there. As I hang up the phone, I feel a flicker of something I haven't felt in a long time. Hope. Kyle may have taken everything from me, but I'm about to take something even more precious from him. His freedom. The abandoned warehouse looms before me, a hulking silhouette against the night sky. I take a deep breath, trying to calm my racing nerves, and push open the rusted door. Amber is waiting for me inside, her face illuminated by the glow of a single bare light bulb. Next to her stands a man I've never seen before, his features obscured by the shadows. "Paige, thanks for coming," Amber says, her voice echoing in the empty space. "This is my contact, the one I told you about." The man steps forward, extending a hand. "Call me Ghost," he says, his grip firm and cold. "I hear you have a problem that needs solving." I nod, swallowing hard. "My ex-husband. He's ruined my life. I want to make him pay." Ghost smiles, a thin, humorless thing. "I can help with that, but it won't be cheap or easy." "I don't care about the cost," I say, my voice hard with determination. "I'll do whatever it takes." He nods, reaching into his jacket pocket and pulling out a small flash drive. "This contains a virus, a sophisticated one. It's designed to infiltrate your ex's company's financial records and create false evidence of embezzlement, enough to send him to prison for a long time." My heart pounds in my chest as I reach for the drive with trembling fingers. "How do I use it?" "You'll need access to his work computer," Ghost explains. "The virus will do the rest. But Paige, once you do this, there's no going back. Are you sure you're ready for the consequences?" I think of all the sleepless nights I've spent crying myself to sleep, of the endless bills and the mounting debt, of the smug look on Kyle's face every time he drops off the kids, knowing he's left me to struggle while he plays house with his pregnant mistress. "I'm sure," I say, my voice steady. "He deserves this." Amber puts a hand on my shoulder, her eyes filled with concern. "Paige, I know you're angry, but this is a big risk. If you get caught—" "I won't get caught," I snap. "Kyle has taken everything from me, my home, my savings, my dignity. I have nothing left to lose." Ghost nods, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. "Then let's get started." Over the next few hours, he walks me through the plan. I'll need to break into Kyle's office after hours, when the building is empty. Ghost will disable the security cameras and give me a key card to access the floor. Once I'm inside, I'll need to find Kyle's computer and insert the flash drive. The virus will do the rest, planting false trails of money transfers and doctored financial records. By the time Kyle realizes what's happening, it will be too late. The evidence will be overwhelming. He'll be fired, disgraced, maybe even arrested. As I leave the warehouse clutching the flash drive, I feel a sense of grim determination settle over me. This is it, my chance to finally make Kyle pay for all the pain he's caused. The next night, I wait until the kids are asleep before slipping out of the house. Ghost has given me everything I need. The key card, the floor plans, the virus. My hands shake as I swipe the key card and enter the darkened building. The offices are silent and still, the only sound the hum of the air conditioning. I make my way to Kyle's office, my heart pounding in my ears. His computer is password protected, but Ghost has given me a device to bypass the login screen. With trembling fingers, I insert the flash drive and watch as the virus uploads. It's done in a matter of seconds, no trace left behind. As I slip back out of the building, I feel a sense of savage triumph. Kyle may have destroyed my life, but I'm about to destroy his. Let him see how it feels to lose everything he holds dear. The next few days pass in a blur of nervous anticipation. Every time my phone rings, I jump, expecting it to be the police, or worse, Kyle demanding to know what I've done. But as the week stretches on with no word, I start to breathe easier. Maybe I actually pulled this off. Maybe for once, justice will be served. And then, on Friday morning, I get the call I've been waiting for. It's Amber, her voice breathless with excitement. "Paige, turn on the news," she says urgently. "It's happening." With shaking hands, I flip on the TV. There, splashed across the screen, is Kyle's face, his expression a mask of shock and anger. "Breaking news," the anchor intones. Kyle Sullivan, high-ranking executive at tech giant Novus Industries, has been arrested on charges of embezzlement and fraud. According to authorities, Sullivan allegedly funneled millions of dollars from company accounts into his own pockets over the course of several years. If convicted, he faces up to 20 years in prison. I sink onto the couch, my legs suddenly weak. I did it. I actually did it. Kyle is finally getting what he deserves. As I watch the news coverage unfold, I feel a sense of grim satisfaction. Interviews with Kyle's coworkers and subordinates paint a picture of a man who was arrogant, entitled, and quick to throw others under the bus to get ahead. He always acted like he was untouchable, one colleague says, his face blurred to protect his identity. Like the rules didn't apply to him. I guess he finally pushed his luck too far. I can't help but smile. If only they knew the truth. But my triumph is short-lived, because the next day, I get another call, this time from my lawyer. "Paige, we have a problem," he says, his voice grave. "Kyle is claiming that you set him up, that you planted evidence to frame him for embezzlement as revenge for the divorce." My blood runs cold. "What? That's ridiculous. How could I have done that?" "I don't know," my lawyer sighs, "but he's threatening to go to the police with his suspicions. If they start digging into your background, your finances, Paige, this could get very ugly, very fast." I hang up the phone, my mind racing. I thought I had covered my tracks, but what if I missed something? What if Kyle somehow figures out what I did? I pace the house, my stomach tied in knots. I can't go to jail. I can't leave my kids without a mother. But I can't let Kyle get away with this either. As if on cue, my phone buzzes with an incoming text. It's from Trina. "I know what you did," it reads, "and I have proof. Meet me at the park in 1 hour, or I go to the police." My heart pounds in my chest as I read the message over and over again. This can't be happening. I was so careful. How could she possibly know? But I have no choice. I have to meet her, have to find out what she knows and how to stop her. An hour later, I'm sitting on a bench in the park, my leg bouncing nervously. Trina appears out of nowhere, her pregnant belly straining against her tight dress. "Well, well, well," she smirks, lowering herself onto the bench beside me. "If it isn't the woman who ruined my life." "I don't know what you're talking about," I say through gritted teeth. She laughs, a harsh, mocking sound. "Please, I know all about your little plan with Amber and that hacker friend of hers. Did you really think you could frame Kyle and get away with it?" My blood turns to ice in my veins. She knows. Oh God, she knows everything. "What do you want?" I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Trina's smile widens. "I want half." "Half of what?" "Half of the money Kyle stole. I know he has it hidden away somewhere. You're going to help me find it, or I'll make sure you go down with him." I stare at her, my mind reeling. The money, of course. Kyle must have been planning to run away with Trina and their baby, start a new life somewhere with his ill-gotten gains. And now she's dragging me into their sordid little scheme. I take a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. I'm in too deep to back out now. Fine, I say, my voice hard. I'll help you, but if you double-cross me, I swear to God I'll make you regret it. Trina just smiles, her eyes glittering with malice. Oh, honey, she purrs. You have no idea who you're dealing with. In the end, Trina's greed is her undoing. She gets sloppy, starts flashing around expensive jewelry and designer clothes, drawing attention to herself. It doesn't take long for the authorities to put two and two together. They raid her apartment and find the missing money, along with evidence tying her to Kyle's embezzlement scheme. She tries to throw me under the bus, of course, telling the police that I was in on it from the beginning. But I've been careful to keep my distance, to make sure there's no paper trail linking me to their crimes. And so, while Kyle and Trina go down in flames, I emerge unscathed. The wronged wife, the innocent victim. No one suspects a thing. The divorce is finalized quickly after that. With Kyle in jail and his assets seized, I'm awarded sole custody of the kids and the house. Trina, facing charges of her own, doesn't even try to fight for visitation rights to their baby. Life slowly returns to normal. I quit my second job, able to support my family on my own now that I'm not drowning in legal fees and debt. Zach and Emma start to heal, to rebuild their trust in me. But I know I can never let my guard down completely. I've seen firsthand how quickly everything can fall apart, how easily trust can be shattered. And so I keep a close eye on my finances, on my kids' social media accounts. I install security cameras around the house, change the locks on all the doors. I'll never be caught off guard again. A year to the day after Kyle's arrest, I get an unexpected visitor. It's my old friend Amber, her face lined with worry. Paige, I need to talk to you, she says, her voice urgent. It's about Ghost. My heart skips a beat at the mention of the hacker's name. I haven't heard from him since that night in the warehouse, haven't dared to reach out. What about him? I ask, trying to keep my voice steady. He's dead, Amber says, her eyes filling with tears. They found his body last week in a dumpster behind some seedy motel. The police are saying it was an overdose, but I don't believe it. Paige, I think someone killed him. I feel like I've been punched in the gut. Ghost, dead? It doesn't seem possible. But even as I try to process the news, a small, selfish part of me feels relief. He was the only other person who knew what I'd done, the only loose end that could unravel everything. I'm so sorry, Amber, I say, reaching out to squeeze her hand. I know how much he meant to you. She nods, wiping away her tears. I just wanted you to know, to be careful. If someone was willing to kill Ghost to keep their secret safe, who knows what else they're capable of? I promise her I'll be careful, that I'll watch my back. But even as the words leave my mouth, I know it's a lie. I'm done being careful. I'm done living in fear. Kyle thought he could destroy me, but I've proven him wrong. I've taken everything he held dear, just like I promised I would. And I've come out the other side stronger, smarter, more powerful than ever. No one will ever hurt me or my family again. I'll make sure of it. Months pass and life settles into a new rhythm. I start dating again. Nothing serious, just casual dinners and movie nights with a coworker named Alex. He's kind and funny and good with the kids. He makes me feel safe, cherished, in a way I haven't felt in a long time. And slowly, gradually, I start to let my guard down. To believe that maybe, just maybe, I can have a fresh start. A chance at happiness. But then, one night, as Alex and I are leaving a restaurant hand in hand, I spot a familiar face across the street. It's Kyle, his prison jumpsuit replaced by a cheap suit, his face gaunt and haggard, and he's staring straight at me, his eyes burning with hatred. In that moment, I realize the truth. It's not over. It will never be over. Because in the end, revenge isn't sweet. It's a poison. A cancer that eats away at your soul until there's nothing left but bitterness and rage. And I've let it consume me, let it turn me into someone I barely recognize. As I watch Kyle disappear into the shadows, I make a silent vow. To be better, to be stronger, to break the cycle of pain and destruction. For my kids, for myself. It's time to let go of the past and start building a future. A future where love, not vengeance, guides my every step.